Hello my small fat adapted family, and welcome back to the Great Keto Bake Off. Now that we're about halfway through the 2021 series, I think it's time that we just skip the intro and get straight into it. So episode 5 of the Great British Bake Off was the first ever German week. The signature was Bavarian biscuits. The technical was Prince Regenten Torte, which is an 8-layered cake that has chocolate custard in between the layers, and it is then coated in a chocolate ganache. And the showstopper was tiered yeast leavened cakes. This week I chose something based on my experience of Germany. I'm not a well-travelled man, having only really visited a small amount of Europe. But about 9 years ago I went to the Berlin Christmas market and I absolutely fell in love with Spandau, especially this bakery that I visited that had these beautiful deep oak arched doors, massive doors with this cobbled archway and these cobbled floors, and they served the best dessert I've ever had in my life, which was a traditional Apfelkuchen, which is a Berlin apple pie. So I was influenced a lot by a particular Bavarian biscuit this week. So for week 5 of the Great British Bake Off, I will be ketofying Lizzie's apple and cardamom Spitzbuben, also known as Cheeky Boy biscuits. This will be almond and coconut flour based shortbread biscuits that look like little faces with a faux apple jam that is sandwiched between them. I am really glad that I decided against making the jammy dodgers from Biscuit Week, because I can now use the recipe that I would have used for that shortbread in today's recipe. Lass uns backen. So in terms of ingredients, you will need for the biscuits 225 grams of salted butter that is soft, 113 grams of almond flour, 28 grams of coconut flour, a quarter of a cup of powdered sweetener, I'm using powdered erythritol, 1 egg yolk, half a teaspoon of vanilla extract, and 1 teaspoon of mixed spice. For the faux jam, you will need 110 grams of courgette that has been peeled and cubed, half a teaspoon of lemon juice, 1 teaspoon of butter, 1 teaspoon of apple flavouring, I am using FlavDrops by MyProtein, 1 tablespoon of sugar-free maple syrup, once again I am using NuNatural's salted caramel, I think it will work nicely in this, 1 tablespoon of sweetener, preferably a brown sugar replacement, I am using Sukrin Gold, half a teaspoon of ground cardamom, and half a teaspoon of ground cinnamon. I know a certain ingredient there sounds very, very weird, but trust me on this one, because when it is done right, it works beautifully. Now we need to start with our apple jam, because it's going to take quite a long time to really get that courgette flavour out and infuse it with that apple flavour. So you're going to want to take a small to medium saucepan and pop it on a low heat. Then you want to add your butter and leave it to melt. Once our butter has melted, we're going to add our sweetener and our lemon juice. Give that a real quick mix. Then you're going to add your courgettes. And we're going to give that a good mix to coat the courgettes in that buttery, sweet, lemony sauce. Once you've given it a nice good mix, you want to pop a lid on your pan. Failing that, just get yourself a plate and pop it over. And we're going to leave that for probably 20 to 30 minutes at a real nice low heat, stirring occasionally until the courgettes have released all of their water, and therefore they'll become nice and tender at that point. So it's been about 20 minutes and it is really bubbling away at the moment, so I think it's released most of its liquid. I've stirred it 3 times during these 20 minutes. I'm now going to take the plate off and we're going to leave it still on the heat to start evaporating the liquid that has come out of the courgette. I've actually taken the plate off and it looks like it's already evaporated most of it, so it's probably only going to be on the heat for maybe another 5 minutes at max, and it feels quite tender, still a little bit tough. Yeah, it's only been about a minute with the lid off and I'm happy that most of the liquid has evaporated and it's got a nice sort of tender feel to it. Brilliant. Okay, so at this point we're going to add our other jam ingredients. So we have the apple flavouring. The The reason I add the apple flavouring now and not while it's cooking, because you would think that would infuse it better, I find it actually loses apple flavour rather than holding it, so I prefer to add the apple flavouring after I've cooked it, keep it nice and strong. We've got your sugar-free maple syrup, then we're going to add the cinnamon, and then an ingredient that I don't think I've ever put in any form of biscuit or jam, and that is cardamom. I think I worked it out to the right amount. I didn't want to go overboard with it, but I want to make sure it's obviously tasteable. It smells nice. It smells very German Christmas market. So now what you're going to do is you're either going to pop this directly into a blender or use a stick blender to mix it until you have a nice, even sauce sort of jam consistency. I like it nice and thick. And once you've done that, you are left with this real thick apple sauce, apple jam mimic. It looks more like the homemade apple jams because the ones in the store always look kind of greeny or yellow, and usually when you actually make them at home they do have this browner colour to them. So what we're going to do with that is just pop it to the side until we need it. We want to get it as cool as possible. I find the cooler it gets, the more sweet and appley it gets as well, so I wanted to get this out of the way first so that we could really get that taste when we get to actually making and putting the cookies together. So now we're going to start making these shortbread biscuits by getting our soft salted butter, adding our powdered sweetener, as well as our vanilla extract. And I'm going to give it a real quick mix with a spoon first, just because powdered sweetener will just go boomf as soon as I start my electric whisk. There we go, that should be enough. So now I'm going to whisk this with an electric hand whisk until the butter is nice and light in colour and fluffy. Now before I clear the whisk away, we're going to add one more ingredient and whisk again, and this is quite a controversial ingredient. Shortbread does not have eggs in it of any form, and I'm saying that this is a shortbread. Now there's a couple of reasons that I'm using an egg yolk. One of them is that we don't have gluten in this recipe because we're not using a standard flour, so there isn't a lot of binding happening from protein. Secondly, we are using high fat flour, almond flour, which means that there's a higher chance that it will be more crumbly and a bit too buttery and won't hold its shape. I'm using an egg yolk to help firm it up a little bit, help it keep its shape and keep the fat bound together. So technically, I guess you would call it a sugar cookie, but I'm still saying it's a shortbread. So we're going to add that, and we're just going to whisk one more time until that's well combined. Now we're going to add all of the other shortbread ingredients. So we have the almond flour, coconut flour, and mixed spice as well. And I'm going to start with a spatula and just slowly start combining this, but I will probably change to kneading with my hands. And I just want it to come together. I don't want to overwork it. I'm going to add about another 25 grams worth of almond flour in. So it's a little bit more cakey than I'd like it. I feel like I might have overworked the butter a little bit when whisking it. So now I've gotten out my arch nemesis, which is cling film, and I'm going to separate my dough into 2 lumps and do 2 separate logs that will go in the fridge for about 30 minutes. And I will just kind of shape it into the shape that I want my cookies to be like. There's no way I'm going to get 32 out of that. This is one thing that I've learned that I'm really not very good at, and that is figuring out the serving sizes of things before having them fully baked. Okay, we'll pop that one in the fridge, and we'll get the other load in. That seems a little bit bigger, that's okay. Don't have to be perfectly even. It's very soft dough I'm working with here, I'm not happy about that. So I'm going to leave them in the fridge for about 30 to 45 minutes before we actually get to cutting them and baking them. So I will see you in a second. Alexa, what is the temperature today?
At the moment, it's 14 degrees Celsius.
It's only 14 degrees.
You can expect a low of 7 degrees.
Thank you. It's only 14 degrees, but it feels like 21, 22 in here. I am really not comfortable with cutting the rounds. So what I'm actually going to do is put down a bit of a coating of coconut oil here. Then I'm putting my dough on top, then I'll put that on top and get my rolling pin and do it that way. Then I can take that, get an even cookie out of it. Yep. So I'm going to pop this in the fridge and get the other one done and then be back in half an hour. What you have just seen is a small montage from an episode I had after putting them in the fridge, where I decided that the logs were too lumpy and I didn't want to cut them into rings through that. So I then rolled everything out and measured them more evenly. Now the last thing I want to do before I pop them in the oven is I've gotten myself a tube. I'm using this because it's the only thing I could find that has that little hole shape at the top, so that I can put 3 holes in 9 of the biscuits, so that when we sandwich them they've got a little face on the front of them. How's that going to go? I don't really know. Do you know what? I might actually be able to make that final biscuit with what's left over out of those holes. So I think I'm going to make the nicest looking ones the tops, and I need to do 9 of these, I believe. Tell you what I will do, I'll put this back in the fridge just while I'm not using it. These are getting soft already, so what I think I'm going to do is do them in 2 batches, so that these have a little bit more time to go back in the fridge. So this one's going back in the fridge, and this one is going in the oven for 12 to 15 minutes, or until they just start to go ever so slightly golden around the edges. We now have all of our shortbread cooked and cooled. So they took 13 minutes per batch. I turned them at 6 minutes just to try and help with the evenness of the browning. What is interesting is that these ones have held their shape a lot better, and the only difference really between these ones and these ones is that these ones had an extra 13 minutes in the fridge whilst these ones were cooking. And it just shows you that just that little bit of chilling time makes the world of difference. The next step is to start putting them together. So I'm just going to get started with that. I think I might heat up the sauce a little bit. I've added sort of a splash, like a teaspoon's worth of water to it as well, just to help it go a little bit more liquidy. Oh, maybe I don't have to heat it since doing that. No, I don't think I do. Okay, I just added a teaspoon of water and it seemed to do the job. Get a little spoon. And I'm just going to dollop a little bit in the middle and then very gently spread it, leaving a tiny little bit at the edges just so that when I press down, if I press down, I don't have it pouring everywhere. And I've got the usual worry of, do I have enough jam to do all of these? So we'll pop those to the side for a second and get out some powdered erythritol. I'm going to do the thing properly this time with a sieve. I never do this. And give them a nice little dusting of powdered sweetener. Oh, that might be a bit much on that one. And now we're going to sandwich them together, which is basically playing a game of mix match, because they're not even. So I kind of have to just figure which one fits to which best. And not press them, because I've just pressed one and it's cracked slightly. I think I might need a bigger plate than this. Okay. They do feel very soft. Lizzie's apple and cardamom Spitzbubens. Let's give our Spitzbuben a try. Oh my god. How do I describe that texture? So it does have grittiness from the almond flour. You can taste the grit of the almond flour. You can taste a little bit of the grit of the coconut flour, but no taste of the coconut flour. You can't really taste the mixed spices in the dough, but the main texture when you bite into it is, I can't think of a positive way to explain it, because I could say it's similar to, you know, when kinetic sand that you put under water and it like holds its shape, and then when you bring it above the water it's hydrophobic, so it turns back into sand. It feels like that, but that's not a very nice way to describe it. It's, hang on, let me try that again. It feels like you're biting into nothing, and then suddenly you get this density of butter and almond. It's like shortbread, but it's too bitter, gritty. It would need more I think it needs more sweetener in it, definitely. And the middle is gorgeous. The apple jam is beautiful, very, very Christmassy, very cinnamony, cardamony, but it's very subtle between this dense biscuit. So I wish there was either just a little bit less biscuit or a little bit more jam. It's definitely got a shortbread aftertaste, but the texture isn't quite right to be shortbread. I don't know what to compare that to. Without bake-off, it's not something that I try and make myself. Firstly, cardamom in sweet recipes isn't really something I do, and biscuits and apple are not a combination that I particularly care for. It tends to be cherry or orange that goes with my biscuits if I'm not just having vanilla. They're interesting. They are very Christmassy. I just wish they were sweeter. They are completely edible though, and it's something a little bit different. Now, in terms of macronutrients, this recipe will make 12 sandwiched cookies, and each cookie is 286 calories, 28.2 grams of fat, 4.4 grams of protein, and 2.5 net carbs. There's not really much else to say about this week. It's given me the chance to try out another shortbread recipe, and I find that keto shortbreads just miss the mark every time, and I think it's that almond flour grittiness. I don't really know how you'd replace that. Maybe lupin flour would work. That's a thought. However, thank you so much for joining me on this incredibly chaotic series. Join me next week for pastry week. But with that being said, that is all for this video. Leave a like if you found it interesting, insightful or helpful. Subscribe for more keto content. Any questions, any comments, any queries, anything down below. Keep calm, keto on. Thanks for watching.